Good evening. So here we are again today with you on this Thursday on July 23rd, 2020, and we bring to you a very, very interesting topic, timber, the most sustainable building material from JS Institute of Design. This is brought to you by Discover Design. Let me give you a small background on what Discover Design is. This is a series of webinar conducted by the JS Institute of Design on discovering everything about design. What is design? What does it mean? What is the process? Whom does it benefit? What do we do with that? And we bring you give you a deeper insight into various aspects of design. Some of it, of course, is really simple. It gives you a lot of simple insight into what design does, but some of them are really deeper with subject knowledge, and we hope this is going to help you discover the delight of design, whether you want to really be a part of it as a designer, as a person who is going to use design, or somebody who is going to talk about design. Today I have some very, very interesting conversation lined up with Bhawana Sharma. And before I really talk about Bhawana Sharma, I must talk about her more as a fantastic entrepreneur and an expert on timber. So welcome, Bhawana, to this special edition. We really think today is going to be very special on this topic.
Thank you, Nien. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. In fact, it's an honor to have a conversation with you, and because you have such an extensive experience of design education and practical learning. So it's actually my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
So let me let you know a little bit more about Bhawana. She founded Artius in 2011. Of course, being an entrepreneur, being a very energetic businesswoman, I can say that perhaps Artius is just 11 years old, but she's been in business for 18 years, building and running successful businesses in high technology. Now, I will leave it to her to explain a little bit more about that. But before that, she's been a graduate in communicative English with post-graduation in finance. So you can see where she's already heading with preparation for business. And she also is one of the promoters of Artius Design Solutions, a technology firm providing design and manufacturing solutions to mechanical manufacturing industries in India. So you can see that she did some vocational training in interior design. And since then, once she ventured on this business of fenestration, you will realize she's going to tell us about why she started on it and what are the things that she knows about it. The only thing I can tell you about Bhawana is when I met her at her factory, I was really impressed by the passion that she had for this material, the deep knowledge that she exhibited. And not only that, she really shared every small thing with us in very simple language to help us understand why timber is the material, the chosen material for her. And beyond that, why it is, according to her, the most sustainable material in building interiors. So welcome, Bhawana. Very quickly, my name is Nien Siao. I am the head of design at JS Institute of Design. And I have, of course, more than 2 decades of experience in academics. More than that, I am an investigator and a learner, digging deep always into any subject matter, and for the moment it is design. So we are going to move on, but let me also invite our participants today to ask as many questions as we go ahead with the subject. Please put your questions in Q&A, and we will be taking it up after Bhawana finishes talking with us. We'll try to take up all your questions in this session today, but in case if we are not able to, just because we have so many questions to answer, we will come back to you, and I have made Bhawana promise that she will answer each and every one of them, even beyond this particular session. So once again, Bhavna, welcome. And let me ask you first very simply, help us understand the raw material, because it just seems so, it's so esoteric just because it comes from the nature around us. And we sometimes don't seem to really understand what that means. So help us understand, what is timber and what does it mean? Is it the same wood log? And help us understand, give us a little more idea into that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Nyan, for the introduction, and I'll straight away try and answer the question. I'll begin with that. So, timber, I think I would like to put it forward in a manner that I think timber is a material you can fall in love with very easily, and not just once, every time you learn a new thing about timber, you fall in love with it. And this learning can go on and on throughout one's life. I think it's God's own building material, and that is how Mother Nature intended it to be, that we guys build our homes out of timber.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, I mean, it is very surprising to know that some of the species of trees, that are built to tall structures can go as high as 100 to 130 meters. So
Mm-hmm.
actually they are supposed to be the nature skyscrapers. So it may a little bit look like a philosophical explanation, but even technically speaking, if you try and understand the etymology of timber, how it evolved, its meaning. So in Old English, actually, timber used to mean a building or a structure, and there was
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and there was a similar verb called timberan or timberian, which actually meant to build. So so right from timber being used to explain as a building, to a structure, then to a building material, and then simply as wood. I mean, to put it across in the commercial market or segment, timber is actually any wood that is processed or sawn in the form of planks or beams, which is further utilized by any sort of industry. So technically speaking, yes, timber is any type of wood which is processed to further build any other product. And
Right.
timber and lumber and wood are today used interchangeably also. So
Okay.
yeah, but
Uh,
for a layman, I think timber is, as I explained, a sawn piece of wood which goes to any other industry.
right. So in our normal homes, and perhaps in many of these, where the role model kind of homes, you see, the wood being the furniture and the woodwork being talked about a lot. And, it is pointed out to us, this is rosewood and this is oak tree. Well, I guess there are lots of names of timbers, the mahogany, or this is ebony. And well, how do you really identify it? Can we do it just as somebody who's been introduced to wood? Can I do it just by looking at it? Is there visual identification ways that I can think of identifying one from the other?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there are parameters and there are identification keys with the help of which you can try and understand which species it is. But because there are n number of species, hundreds of species, so even
Mm-hmm.
for experts, at times it is a little difficult to identify which species. But generically used species, you can, if you are looking at the timber again and again, or you work with those species, it is easy for you to identify. Like for example, some of the softwood species are lighter in color, and they would
Okay.
have very straight kind of grains. For
Mm-hmm.
example, like, I have some here with me. Like if you can see this, this is a pine wood in the raw form. This is yellow cedar in the raw form. And,
Mm-hmm.
this is basically Western red cedar in the raw form. So you will see there are certain distinct grains.
Mm-hmm.
you know this is little bit yellowish in color, this one is little reddish in color. So some of these species would have very straight kind of grains, some would have flowery grains. So yes, by the look of it, by the density of it, by the texture, the kind of grains are in which particular direction, yeah, you can basically try and find out which
Right.
species timber it is. Yeah.
So I just came across a very interesting slide. Can we go back one slide, Tarika? Okay, so this, I want you to explain to our participants what this natural carbon sink is. Really, what actually is wood? How is it made by nature?
Yeah. So I think I would like to start by saying, when I said that it's God's own building material, so it is interesting to find out that how this raw material is built, you know.
Mm.
So I think we all know what photosynthesis is, and you know, the tree takes the carbon dioxide from the environment, and it uses sunlight as energy, it uses water from the soil, and then it keeps the carbon and gives the O2 back and makes the food for itself. So it is such a science, it's such an interesting thing. I think only God could make this kind of a raw material, wherein when the raw material is being built, when it is growing, even in that time, you know, it is taking away the carbon. So the tree's body is carbon, you know, 50% of tree fiber is wood is actually carbon. So it is taking that much of carbon from the environment and giving back oxygen back to the environment. So it is it is sequestering carbon. So you will be surprised to know that 1 cubic meter of timber stores about 1 ton of carbon. So
Mhm.
while the tree is growing, it is taking away so much of carbon forever, in a manner, unless it, you know, burns and or it gives back to the environment. So it takes away that much of carbon, gives oxygen for back to the atmosphere. So that is how it is growing. So that is why it is sort of a carbon sink, because it stores carbon.
Right.
And
Uh,
it is because it can easily be regrown. You know, you can
mhm.
plant trees, you can keep on planting trees. That's the simple reason why it is sustainable and infinitely renewable. You can keep on growing timber
Correct.
till the time you want, and keep on harvest and using it for various applications.
So very quickly, I'm hearing such good things about timber. I just want to know from you, what are the negative concerns about timber or wood?
Okay, before negatives, I would like to touch upon the positives once, and then I would like to come to the negatives.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the positives list is endless. I mean, I can go on talking about the positives throughout the day. But yes, very quickly, I would like to say that one, I already mentioned that it is sustainable, it is infinitely renewable. But apart from that, specifically talking about the architecture, interiors, and home decor applications, you know, it offers remarkable aesthetics. So it is actually unmatched. So if you go, I mean, I heard a Canadian architect. I mean, a lot of people know him as a celebrated architect called Michael Green. I mean,
Mhm.
he said that I have, and I was so impressed by that statement, you know. So he said in one of the forums that when I design my buildings using steel, I mean, if there's a steel column in a building, I've never seen people hugging it, but I've seen people hugging a timber column. So it is such a
Mhm.
warm and, you know, remarkable material which has such great aesthetics. There is wide variety of species available for the designers to choose from. So, you know, it can match up to the design sensibilities of any architect or interior design. So they can really choose from wide variety. Then there are so many other things, because the way it is a lightweight material, and still it has very good tensile strength. So you can really build very tall structures using timber. It can probably take the similar kind of load what concrete can take of similar size of beam or
Mhm.
column, but the self weight is around 1/6. So it is such an interesting material to build with. And then
Correct.
a lot of other great qualities, like heat conductivity is low, and you know, it has great acoustic properties, and it has, in fact, very interestingly, great exceptional fire and earthquake resistance. So
Mhm.
actually, the list of positives is huge. But to answer your question, what are the negatives? Yes,
Right.
it sort of lost the charm in our country, though it was used structurally also earlier. I mean, if you see in
Mhm.
the past, there are very great structures done in timber in the past in our country, but it lost the charm. And I think one of the major
Sadhika,
issues,
can you just go back a few slides, please?
yeah,
Yes.
one
Thank
of
you.
the
Thank you. That's
major
that's
issue,
all.
in my
Next. Yes.
understanding, is actually unavailability of all kind of timber species, and unavailability of graded timber. For example, when I started my company as a manufacturer, you know, I started with a hardwood species, teak. I started with working with teak because in India people love teak and they want to see those. So I thought I don't have to maybe sell at least the wood because I was bringing in a very new technology as it is. So I thought maybe I'll also start working with Burmese teak. But you won't believe it was actually a nightmare to build with timber which doesn't come from an organized market, which is not graded. When I say graded, I mean that if suppose I want long timber planks which have no defects, so for me to achieve that for timber which is straight away processed by the log and given to me, it is actually a nightmare. So the wastage was amounting to about 80% in spaces for us. So then slowly we started working with Canadian wood, which comes from quite an organized market segment where the timber is graded. So I think that is one of the negatives, that in our country, graded timber is not available. But generically speaking, what kind of issues people have been facing, uh, 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 the main issue which people face is expansion and contraction, because
Correct.
because timber is a natural material, it breathes. So actually it tries to come in the equilibrium with the environment, so if there is more moisture, it will try to absorb it and it will expand. If there's less moisture, it will release. So so it will expand and contract depending upon the kind of surroundings it is in. So and if this happens, and if somebody is making a door or a window out of it, or any nice piece of furniture, and if it bends and expands and contracts, so it's a bit of a problem. So that is a concern. Then there are other concerns like termites, insects, because there's some species which are prone to termite attacks. Then if the seasoning is not done properly, it could have a rot attack, fungus could attack it. So these are other issues, which are there. And then polish getting chipped off during rains, or if there is expansion and contraction in the timber coating gets damaged very quickly. So these are some of the concerns which I think the industry faced, and that is why maybe probably they moved to other materials which were easy to work with in a way. But I think
yes. So I'm very sure with all these problems, you also have answers for many of these. And so we'd like to hear about that. Perhaps for termites, and then of course warping and the twisting that happens because of the moisture. Could you help us understand that?
Yeah, if I talk about termites first, or I'll take it up because the slide shows the movement in the timber. So Artius basically, so there are a lot of new age materials which are available today, new age technology which is available today, with the help of which actually, counter most of the problems I've mentioned. So the technology we use, which we started with, is actually known as glued lamination. So this is a technology wherein timber is engineered. Okay, so any kind of species can be engineered. It could be a hardwood species, it could be a softwood species. But by engineering, what I mean is, I'll probably I'll show you what it is. So can you see this piece of timber?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So here, if you see, there are distinct multiple layers. Can you see the multiple layers?
If it's in the slide, we can show it in the slide also. Can you move the slides ahead, please? Right here.
Yeah, here it's easy. I mean,
yes.
I think you understand it much better. So glued lamination is a technology wherein timber is multi-layered. Okay, so what happens is the movement in the timber generally happens in the direction of the grains. So if all the grains are in one direction, so movement is going to be much more.
Correct.
Whereas in this particular technology, we basically multi-layer the timber to thinner sections, and each layer is seasoned separately, versus the whole plank being seasoned together. We season the layers separately, and so it is much better seasoned. We can look at all the defects which are there when we cut them, so we can remove all the defects for us, because for our industry, I mean for our product, we don't need any defect in timber. And then it is glued in a manner under pressure that the grain directions are opposite, as you see in the picture, that the grain directions are opposite. So this is a technology wherein it counters the movement, so it self counters the movement. So if each layer tends to go in one direction, the other tends to go in the other direction. So it balances the whole movement in timber. So with glue lamp, we were able to achieve that kind of stability, that expansion and contraction is almost negligible. I mean, it is as simple as that. We are able to offer lifetime guarantee on performance on our products. And in case of a door or a window, if it bends or expands or contracts, the door doesn't function.
Right.
So RTS is able to, offer lifetime guarantees in the product. So it is because of this technology. And then when you glue laminate it, of course, you can achieve much longer spans. So like in my factory, I can do a 10-meter wide section. So I can do, and in countries like Canada, people can go up to 100 meters also. So,
Right.
you can really get longer spans. And when you are able to limit the expansion and contraction in timber, you are actually increasing the life of the coating also, because the
Right.
coat gets damaged because of the movement in the timber. And then we use certain coatings which are like microporous. It lets the wood breathe. So again, the advantages are too many, and mostly we are able to counter all the issues which I had explained when I was explaining the concerns. uh,
Right. So this is one of your joints in the fenestration.
yes,
What are you
yes.
showing over here?
So this is particularly a section, window section. So this shows the frame and the sash. So what you see at the bottom is the frame of the window, and what you see on top is the section of the sash. So basically, if you see, it is both the sections are glued laminated. So you see multiple layers of timber. So I can show you, if you, and this is like this. I don't know if I can show you. Yeah, like this. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the way the joinery is. So it is all CNC machined, and in the slots, all the hardware and the glass and the, insulation gaskets go in here, which you see in this particular slide. So you see the insulation gaskets, you see the glass. So what I'm trying to show here is, when we build with glue lamp, we can actually do a window system. So it's no more a
Okay.
window, but it's a system. So it is thermally insulated, it is dust proof, soundproof. So
Mm-hmm.
it's packed. When it is locked, it is absolutely packed and sealed. So
So
that is what
are you
I'm showing
saying,
you.
that the glue lamp which is used for your window system can be used in any environment in India? Let us say it's a hot desert climate like Rajasthan, and you can use a similar wood, similar system in a cold place, let's say the hills. And do you does it hold good for both the kinds of climates?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what RTS has been doing from last 9 years, because initial years were, it was again a nightmare for us, because we were figuring out all these things, what you're mentioning. Because
Mm-hmm.
the way glue lamp happens across the globe, and it sometimes fail in our country. So you're absolutely right. There could be problems even in glue lamp if it is not engineered in a manner that it suits our Indian weather conditions. So we
Okay.
probably chose the best species which could, handle all these variations in all kind of temperatures. So we specifically use a Canadian wood species called yellow cedar, Alaskan yellow cedar. And yes, this particular species is termite resistant, all insect resistant, and it is very good in outdoor performance. So it can really perform very well, be it any kind of situations. So first of all, it is the kind of species, and then the way we do glue lamp. So even
Correct.
the way we do glue lamp is a little bit different, and it is done across the globe. And we did it in a manner, and we engineer it in a manner that it suits our weather conditions.
Right. Last time when we met, you also talked about termite treatments. Should be really be kept to the minimum because it can be harmful to your health.
Yes.
I'd like you to just inform that because I would think our participants need to be informed about some of these things.
Yes, so there are a lot of interesting facts about termites and wood. Not all timber species is food for termite. First of all, we need to understand that. So there are
Mhm.
certain species which termite doesn't like to eat. So if it is a great deal, if it is a great concern, if termite is a great concern, I would like to advise people to use the species which are naturally termite resistant, because if you do
Mhm.
any treatment, it's going to harm you and the environment as well. So we at RTS don't believe in doing many treatments. Rather, we believe in choosing the species which are naturally termite resistant, and then we further create barriers. So,
Mhm.
for example, when we install a window system or when we install a beam or a column, we create natural barriers. So, like we have PU foam all around our window system, we have silicone ropes all around our window systems. Then we might have a metal plate at the bottom when we are making a post or a column. So we work in these two philosophies. Either we choose the species which is absolutely termite resistant, or we try and create natural barriers so that termite cannot cross.
Right. Uh, Bhavna, you talked about window systems. I mean, I'm very sure that we all have windows at home. There are few types of windows that we are exposed to, but yours seem to really have some very sophisticated hardware applied to them. Why don't you point it out to us?
Yeah. So at RTS we do all kind of window and door systems, probably which people have experienced in other materials like aluminum, or other materials like aluminum or UPVC. So we basically do all high quality systems in solid wood, I mean in blue lamp timber, and we use very not, I would not say very sophisticated, but we use hardware to do all kind of systems. Like we do very large lift and slide doors. So lift and slide is a technology wherein when you unlock the door, it lifts up a little bit and it slides flawlessly. When you lock it, it sits down and absolutely compresses itself and seals itself. So all our window system are equipped with security seals, locking points at locking at multiple points, gaskets all around, and
Mhm.
all of this is possible because the timber is glued laminated.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, if there is a movement in timber, all this hardware either won't fit or it won't function.
Correct.
Because it's a product which is moving. So yes, all our systems have inbuilt security systems and locking systems, gaskets, and even we have incorporated like biometric locking system, and then the screens, the mosquito screens. So
Right.
anything which comes from RTS will have an integrated bug mesh, because in India we have a lot of mosquitoes. So if you open the window, you should be able to enjoy it and have the mesh around. So yes, and these
So
are
would
all
your
types of.
system apply to both doors and windows? And what
Yeah.
would be the maximum heights that it can cater to?
Oh, I think the limitation would be glass and the hardware, not the wood. So
Okay.
I've done even 14 feet high doors, and I've done 40 feet wide glazing systems. So I've seen all the limitation is either glass or the weight carrying capacity of the hardware, not timber.
Correct. So let's have a look at some more of the slides, because that gives us an idea about the kind of uh,
Yeah.
extensions that have been added in by Artius. Um, let's look at.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this is basically a outward opening casement window. So this one opens outside, so you only see the handle in the front. You don't see
mhm.
any hardware. This window is a tilt. Yeah, so you don't see any other hardware. This particular window is a tilt and turn window, so it turns open inside, and you can bring it to a ventilation position. Because
Right.
a lot of people have heard my clients saying that, Bhavna, we want to sleep at night and we want the window to be left open. So this is
Correct.
the perfect window system for that kind of a requirement, because you can tilt it to a ventilation position, and there'll be a bug mesh which will go outside, so even the mosquitoes and flies cannot come in. So this is a dual mechanism kind of a system which will open, turn in, or come to a ventilation position.
Right. So now I want to take you to another product of interior, which is the beams and the posts. In traditional homes, we have seen the span of the house being supported by the beam on the top, and one would think that that perhaps has to be the perfect piece of wood which gets which is used for spanning. Whereas, and then there are these posts which sort of keep the house up. Now, these are normally slightly smaller houses, but we have been seeing in the visuals, and of course even in some of the modern structures, posts and beams being of wood. Can you help us understand that and tell us about some of the most exciting developments happening in this area?
Yeah. So yes, post and beam, that is what we do. So RTS also does home seam, post beam construction, and post and beam construction was being used in our country also earlier in the past, and now it is extensively used across the globe. So,
Okay.
but the advantage with glue lamp is that with glue lamp you can really make beams and columns which are really long in their spans.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, because you can multi-layer the timber, you can glue it, so you can create any kind of size. So limitation would be your machinery, what kind of machinery setup you have.
Mm-hmm.
So there are companies across the globe which can do beams which are spanning, like as I mentioned earlier, like 100 meters of span. So
Right.
you'll be surprised to know that using post and beam glue lamp and using certain other materials like CLT, which is cross laminated timber, people are making skyscrapers. Like so Japan is going to build a 70-story building, all
Wow.
in. And in Canada, within the British Columbia, University of British Columbia, there was an 18-story building which came up in 9 weeks by 9 people, all in.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think,
That's really great. I
yeah.
think I have actually forgotten to add in the poll questions, though these were prepared for to ask the participants. So I'm going to ask the participants to take two poll questions together very quickly, and Bhavna will comment on this. What qualities matter for the wood that you use? And of course, you have already heard Bhavna say a lot of things, but I want you to make up your mind and tell us what should be the qualities that you would go for. And let's see what they have to say. Oh, these are very smart participants, I must say. But typically, uh, qualities of sustainability, lightweight and easy to use, seasoned and preserved. Of course, probably you do, as whether as consumers or even as experts, we do know that this is the requirement of wood, and which is now being fulfilled according to what Bhavna is talking about. So thank you for this first answer. It was a very smart answer. What do you think, Bhavna?
I think the most important thing is sustainability.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, rest of them are also important, but it is very important for us as designers or us as homemakers or whoever is responsible for building that particular space. It is very important to really know from where the timber is coming.
Right.
Because the entire timber which we use at RTS comes from properly managed forests. So
Right.
properly managed forests are forests where much more trees will be planted than they are cut. So there is a proper cycle which is followed. So one tree, if it is cut today, maybe probably it will be cut 100 years later down the line.
Right.
So these more forests are, I mean, so there are certifications available. So timber actually from organized market comes with a lot of certifications, like an FSC certification or a PFC certification, which means it is green to use this particular wood. So in my opinion, you should not use wood which is not coming from sustainable forces, because then you're harming the environment. So
Right.
for
That makes sense. So it's not just that we should be concerned about only the wood product once it comes off the tree. We should be concerned about right from the beginning the whole management of timber growing, and it's probably the way it is preserved and regrown. I think so. All of us need to be very aware of the whole cycle. It's like a 360-degree cycle. Let's look at the next poll. Timber and timber products that are mostly used for doors and window frames is hardwood such as oak, poplar, or walnut, softwood such as pine, fir, or cypress, or glue lamb. I know it's a little technical because I would really, I mean, now that I've heard you, Bhavna, I know the answer, but I'm sure our participants probably may have some other opinion. So let's say what they are going to look at. What are they going to be talking about? Okay. So they are suggesting that hardwood such as oak, poplar, or walnut be used. Uh, Probably it makes sense. Softwoods are not really needed, but glue lamp is what Bhavna has been talking about. So Bhavna, would you give your opinion about what would be the difference between hardwood and glue lamp?
See, if you specifically talk about India as of now, yes, hardwood is being used in the local industry to make doors and windows. But across the globe, if you see, I think mostly all the companies who do timber, window, and door systems, they will only use glue lamp because hardwood will bend like anything, So
Uh-huh.
and it cannot meet the present day needs, because previously in the past we are used to seeing doors and windows in hardwood. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
in India, if you see, if you have an ancestral house, you will see hardwood was used to make a door or a window. But that time a door or a window was very small. It was not like a moving wall. So nowadays I've seen architects replacing the entire wall with the glazing. so
Correct.
so hardwood really cannot match that kind of requirement. So it has to be glue lamp if you have to do it in modern day. But yes, previously hardwoods were used for making doors and windows. Yeah, and the
Yes, so we have heard the advantages of glue lamp, and that is catering to our new
yeah.
needs. Let's look at, so you can see these houses, huge spans of houses being built by wood. I'd like you to please put on the video, which for me is really awesome, and let's see what
Yeah,
that is.
so I think
It's amazing to think the wood, which we sort of really feel, okay, there it is.
yeah.
Floor slabs are also wood. It is just awesome. 14
It's a
floors
residential.
in 9 weeks or 9.5 weeks. But what would be the cost difference between a building made of wood compared to the concrete, which normally traditionally would have been used?
Uh, See, if the industry reaches this kind of volume, what you see here in Canada, where this building is done, I think even for this building, the cost difference was I don't think so more than 15 to 20%. But it has to have some considerable amount of volumes for the industry to be able to near that price. But
Correct.
today in India, because we are still trying to educate a lot of people to consider timber as the viable building material. So at
Mhm.
this moment, it is more expensive as compared to concrete. But otherwise, if there is some respectable volume, I think it can match the prices or maybe a little bit higher than concrete.
Right.
But a lot of advantages in terms of the time it takes, So if you look at the entire cost of ownership, so I think it's going to be even less than what and then the environmental impact. I mean, if
Right.
you look at everything from the from a bird's eye view, I think it is not expensive to use wood.
So, reiterate, if you've already probably done a little bit of talk on sustainability, help us understand, why do you say it is much more sustainable than probably the metal that we use in building or any other material? Why would you say that?
Yeah, see, because you have to understand, and if you look at any material, you have to understand the cradle to end of life journey.
Mm-hmm.
So as I explained, when the trees are grown, so they are already taking away a lot of carbon from the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, so they are taking, so when the raw material is being made, in this case, which is wood, it is taking away a lot of carbon from the environment. And then, so it is not using any other energy or fossil fuel. So it is just using sunlight to grow.
Right.
And then you so and then yes, transportation is one cost, but other than that, even the woodwork machinery consumes very less energy as compared to any other metal. So if you have to use, I mean, a material like metal or aluminum, so you have to first put a power plant, so it is so they are extremely energy intensive technologies and processes. So wherein timber is very easy to machine, very easy to use, and the machinery doesn't, I mean, and it is not very energy intensive manufacturing process. Um, and then when the life is over, I mean, suppose you built a home out of wood, or you built a door or window out of wood, I mean, the waste, I mean, in a way, it can again further go to any other industry. So it's actually not a cradle to end of life, but a cradle to cradle kind of a product, where it ends and then it can be used for any other application. So if you understand the whole thing, first of all, it is green because it is taking away a lot of carbon. And then if it is grown in a sustainable sustainably managed forest, so basically if you cut one tree there, they are going to plant four more trees. So
Mm-hmm.
tree, while growing, it is actually capturing the carbon. And when the tree is fully grown, it does not need that much of carbon, so it is not that efficient in taking away the carbon and giving back the oxygen. So if
Right.
you cut it and you plant four more trees or five more trees, it is actually taking away, the younger trees are going to do a much better job, and they take away a lot of
The
carbon
carbon
from the
from the
environment.
air.
Yeah, from the air, from the atmosphere. So if
Correct.
you look at the whole cycle, it is a natural resource, but it can be regrown. So
Right.
it is infinitely renewable. There is a material which is so green. When it is growing as a raw material, it is consuming very less energy. And even when the product is ending its life, it can go for some other use, and then you can simply keep on growing it. So I think there is no other natural resource which is infinitely renewable. So you can keep cutting, keep planting, and use it forever. So, and I think that is why I think that it is God's own building material, and I think Mother Nature intended it that way. So um, I think
Bhavna, I really think that's your baby, and you're talking about it as passionately like any mother would. But let me ask you this question about our Indian industry scenario. What is it like? What do you think? Is it developed to an extent by which a lot of designers can pick this material to use in their designs, or what more should be done if we are to start using it extensively?
no, I don't think so. It is ready as yet to take care of all the kind of needs our Indian market can have. I don't think so. Our own market can cater to it. But yes, today, I mean, there are a lot of other countries which is actually exporting timber. So countries like Canada, the US, even Latvia, Russia, so Australia. So a lot of timber is being imported today. So in terms
Mhm.
of timber or the raw lumber, yes, I mean, I can say that now a lot of wood is actually being imported, but the industry as a whole is not yet matured. And I think a lot has to be done by people like you, by the institutions, that we need some institution which teach how this technology should, how timber should be used modern way,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
there is really scope of lot of institution which should be teaching
Correct.
that how this material should be used. So more and more manufacturers have to start again building with timber, again start using solid wood as a raw material, because a lot of them who were initially working in timber, they have maybe moved to other alternatives because it was very difficult to use timber,
Right.
because there were a lot of such concerns which we have already spoken about. So there's a lot of education, I think, which is required,
Which is
and I
required.
think this has immense potential. And I mean, I
Right.
don't.
So let's now bring on the third poll question. And I'm sure that if you've been listening carefully to Bhavna, you'll be able to answer this very easily. Which building material, according to you, helps in decreasing Earth's carbon footprint? Timber, brick, or concrete? So the issue is, Bhavna, you did not talk about brick and concrete or its possibilities. Anyway, let's see what the participants think. They have been hearing about timber. I'm sure they sort of perhaps know, oh my God, this is 100%. You've really been successful in talking about timber, but perhaps the participants already know a lot about it. And I must give kudos to all our viewers today. That's really smart of you. And I do think if we have, if our viewers today take back home some knowledge, subject knowledge about this material, you are going to make your decisions wisely. At least I do think that's going to be a big help. Um, I'm going to go on to now a lot of questions for you. And so let me begin with, you can take a breather in the meantime, 10 breaths, and I'm going to start off with questions. Let me see. All right. So Archie has a question for you. How can we adopt timber as a building material, considering it's a little costly? How to use it to make our design eco-friendly? So her main concern is the cost, and and of course she wants to make the design eco-friendly. So can you help her?
Yeah, if you have to make the design eco-friendly, first of all, you have to be very conscious while choosing where the timber is coming from, as I already mentioned. So you've got to use timber which is like a certified timber, which is like a which has a green certification. And as far as the cost is concerned, I think there are a lot of species of timber, and not every species is very expensive. There are
Mhm.
certain species which are very warm, which look very, very beautiful, and so, and then you've got to use it more and more to make it a much more viable building
So
material,
in
because
terms of volume, if there is use, then it is going, overall the market is going
you,
to make it much more viable in
yes,
terms of cost for you. And I
yes.
do think that over the years, as Bhavna has been pointing out, that we need to look at the management of the whole system for the raw material. I mean, if we are managing the forest well, we have the sustainability factor involved with growing of the plants, its maturity, and replanting again. If we have the system in control, I'm very sure timber is going to become a viable material overall, whether cost wise or in terms of its quality use, and its relevant aligned industries are going to perform to a more efficient level.
And I would like to
So,
add one thing here, because it's actually a very interesting question, and a lot of architects also ask me the same question. And one other way is to actually start using timber. I mean, if not completely, it could be a hybrid kind of a construction where you marry two materials. So
mhm,
you can use it with stone, with concrete, with steel also. So it's not that you've got, when you're building a house or a structure, it need not be entirely in timber. So it can be really economized by a lot of methods. Like when we work with architects, we try and figure out a lot of methods in terms of calculations of the kind of sections we are using, the kind of species we're using. So we do a lot of stuff wherein we use mix of species, where the areas where we want to show, which is like aesthetically are very important, where there we use some other species, and the areas which are hidden we use other species. So you can really mix match a lot of things to bring down the cost, and that is also.
So, with so much of knowledge happening, I must tell you, Bhavna, we need to have a proper module on timber as a raw material to be studied in any
I think
interior
I can invite
architectural course.
anyone to come and visit my factory if somebody is interested, seriously interested. You can always,
That's
ask.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And we will take up that offer, and we are going to invite a lot of students over and bring them over to your factory for a deeper and closer inspection of the wood. Here's a
Good.
question from Vipin. Which kind of wood is suitable for Indian weather conditions? Very smart question. Is moisture content a factor considering, which is considered while selecting the right kind of wood?
See, you've got to understand the application. Okay,
Mhm.
which application you're going to use the timber for. So if it is indoors, like if you're going to use the timber for an indoor application, like for wall cladding or for making furniture, so largely you can use, any species. It's not going to give you much of a problem as long as it is properly seasoned. But
Mm.
if the application is like outdoor,
Mm.
wherein it is exposed to, the like for example, like a glazing system, like a large window system which is exposed to all kind of weather conditions, then you've got to be very, very particular in choosing. So you've got to see the timber which is durable against rot, and fungus attack, which is durable against termites, which can withstand all kind of weather conditions. So one of the species which we use at RTS is Alaskan yellow cedar, which we use for making doors and window systems.
Right.
And we use another species called Douglas fir for structural purposes.
Right.
So, you've got to really see which application you're using it for, and then the right methods to use it. It has to be properly seasoned, and you have to really let the wood breathe and circulate. So there are ways and practices and methods with which you can ensure that the life of the timber is really long.
Right. So I'm sure, Vipin, you must have found some answer from what Bhavna has just mentioned. Here's a question from Rosemary. Is bamboo classified under wood? And otherwise, she's asking what type of timber do you use? And I do know that you've answered quite a few times, but please do
Yeah,
let me know.
classified as a wood, and in fact, a lot of construction is happening out of bamboo in places where it is available, and people are even doing tall structures using bamboo because it's
Right.
it's it's like a hardwood. So yes, it is considered as wood, and I think this industry is also coming up quite well in northeast, part of our country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, what type of timber do you use? Would you like to name it in a list?
Yeah, at RTS, as I mentioned, because our product line is window and door systems, and we also do structures. So for windows and doors, we typically use Alaskan yellow cedar and another species, which is American white oak, so which comes
Mhm.
from the US. So that is a hardwood species, and Alaskan yellow cedar is a softwood species.
Mhm.
But when we glue laminate, and but cedar is much more durable for outdoor applications.
Okay.
So we use the, and for building structures, we largely use Douglas fir for
Okay.
structural purposes, for beams and columns.
Thank you for I hope that was not a secret, but really thank you for that
No,
answer.
no, not
There's
at all. Yeah.
a question from Pankaj. How is glue laminated wood different from Akoya?
Okay. So Akoya is basically a brand name. So it is basically a brand name, and Akoya is wood which is acylitated pine. So
Okay.
pine, yeah. So pine wood goes through a lot of acidic processes, and in a way, the wood is dead.
Mhm.
So that is Akoya, but it is able to counter the issue of expansion and contraction because it is not breathing anymore. So even with Akoya, you can do doors and windows and you can do structure, but it is quite different from glue lamp because glue lamp is still a natural breathing timber. It is as natural as solid wood. So there
Mhm.
is huge difference between Akoya and glue lamp because Akoya is acidated pine, which is dead wood, And glulam is engineered wood, which is still breathing, but it does not expand and contract because the grain directions are opposite and it counters the movement.
Right. And Pankaj also continues to ask that apart from yellow cedar, is Meranti or oak also feasible? How many layers of wood is done by Artius?
Miranti, I don't use for doors and windows and for this kind of application because it is not termite resistant at all, and it does not come from organized market, so you don't get graded timber. So that is the reason we don't use it, and neither I suggest. Yes, oak. We also use oak. I think he mentioned oak as well. Yeah.
Yes, oak.
Yes, oak, American white oak we use for doors and windows because again it is termite resistant and it's from properly managed forests. So
Mhm.
yes, oak we do use, but Miranti I would not like to
Okay.
recommend. And what was the other part of the question?
And the layers of wood used are done by Artius.
Okay. So there are multiple, so there are so many variations. So when we do a fixed window, maybe there are 3 layers. When we do a casement window, there are 4 layers. When we do a lift and slide door, there are 5, 6 layers. So it's very different for every kind of window section. And as far as a beam or a column is concerned, again, it depends on the structural consultant that, he decides the kind of the size of the beams and columns. So it really depends on that, on the size of the beam in the column.
Right. Thank you for that answer. And there's a question from Ankur. How do you ensure the safety in construction? So, well, Ankur has seen those 14 floors being built. What would be those safety features which are considered while building the construction? What are the
Safe
safety
in the
features?
sense like how the construction is being done, or fire resistance, or what kind of, like, what is exactly?
Yes. So, well, the question is just simply what are the safety feature ensures the safety? Sorry, he says fire safety. How do you ensure fire safety? I misread that.
Yes, yes. So fire is again a very, very interesting subject because there is nothing. First, understand that there's nothing which is fireproof.
Mhm.
So everything is fire rated. And I mentioned initially that timber has great fire resistance. So now you have to understand. Okay, I'll start by giving an example. If you have tried to, have you ever tried taking a log, a thick piece of timber and projecting it to fire? So it takes a lot of time for it to catch fire.
Mhm.
So so what happens is, and the fire spread rate is very well defined. So we know, depending upon the species, that how much wood will be charred, in case of a 1 hour fire or a 2 hour fire. And so if a building has to be fire rated for 2 hours, it will be the glue lamp beam or column will be thicker by that much of size. And you've got to understand that timber, in case of timber, it's unlike metal, because if you have a steel beam or a column, it will simply collapse in case of fire. But whereas timber will only char from all the sides, so it doesn't buckle or bend or collapse from the core. So the loss of the material happens only by charring from all the 4 sides. And
Mhm.
this charred layer further acts as an insulator. So
Mhm.
basically, if the source of the fire stops, probably the fire will not go further. So this charred layer itself acts as an insulator. So that is one big thing, the way naturally this material is. And secondly, whenever we have to design it for particular fire rating, so it is accordingly made that much of thicker from all around. And there are other coatings also available for fireproof.
Correct. So
So
there's
it's
a similar question about do you use wood preservative to enhance the life of wood? This is a question by Anil.
no, we
Any
don't
wood
use it.
preservative? Okay.
No, at
Um,
RTS we don't use any preservatives because we are very careful about the kind of species we have chosen. This can probably last more than the life of the building it is going in. So suppose I'm making a door and window and the building is for 100 years, I think very easily the life of windows are going to be more than the life of the building. So I actually don't need to use any preservatives.
correct. So, well, we can take on the Tucker, correct? Okay. Question by Richa. How efficient is timber in providing thermal insulation? With the same objective of sustainability, how is mud as construction material? I mean, so I'm going to divide this question because it's a very long question. So Richa, we are going to first answer how efficient is timber in providing thermal insulation?
I think it's a natural insulator, and it has actually, if in case of it has great resistance to rising temperatures. So in fact, if there is more temperature, it actually dries up and becomes stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So the timber is going to dry up and it becomes stronger. So I think it's a natural. And in fact, if you see places like home theaters, or where you need very good amount of insulation, places like concert halls, so I think it is one of the favorite materials because it is a
Right.
natural insulation. The
Right.
acoustic.
So the next question by Richa is, sorry, I'm really rushing because your questions there are such fantastic questions and there's so many of them. We need another session for it, but I'm going to try to get get across to you with these questions. With the same objective of sustainability, how is mud? I mean, that is, you have to probably give your opinion as construction material. Mud structures are cooler and help to moderate the temperature. And how would timber perform in this respect?
How would I mean, mud is, I mean, as far as sustainability is concerned, yes, it is a good material, but I don't think so. The kind of spans today we need in the modern architecture, I don't think so. It will be able to cater to all kind of requirements. But yes, sustainability wise, it is equally good.
Okay. Okay, we go on to the next one. Mudita's question says, what are the advantages of cross-laminated timber compared to glulam and solid wood? To what extent can we ignore the effect of moisture content when calculating stress and strain on timber joints? So very technical question. Mudita, I'm very sure you're working with this. Did you get that, Bhavna?
Yeah. So first of all, I think she asked
Or the cross-laminated timber compared to glulam.
Yeah, so cross-laminated timber is another technology
Mm-hmm.
wherein glulam, as I explained, has multiple layers of timber glued together. So typically, glulam is used to make a beam or a column in construction.
Mm-hmm.
CLT is cross-laminated timber, and it is actually used to make boards, white boards. So you can really make walls and slabs out of CLT. So CLT is done in a manner wherein you actually lay timber first adjacent to each other, and then the another layer which is perpendicular to the layer beneath. So you actually make a board out of
CLT.
and the applications are totally different because glue is generally used for beams and columns, and CLT is used for generally for walls and slabs. And
And
as moisture content is concerned, yes, we have to be careful about the moisture content because uh, otherwise, if there is variation in the moisture and moisture content, the wood can be under a lot of stress, and it can again it will try to again balance itself and expand or contract. So it is very important to ensure that the timber is properly seasoned, and then these two technologies have totally different applications.
correct. So Soham has a question. Does glulam have deflection or buckling for longer spans of beams or columns since they are being the carrier of loads?
So actually, yes, every material would have such concerns. But then when a building is designed, it is designed keeping in mind the loading conditions. So
Mm-hmm.
So when I mean, and it is true for any structure, whether you use concrete or you use steel, it is the same way. So timber also has certain material properties, and bases those properties. So now actually this is very well documented, all these things, the how the load calculations are done, so there are structural consultants whom we also consult, because we are not designers or structural consultants, we are manufacturers. So when any architect designs a building, it goes to a structural consultant who vets the building, who checks all the loads and everything, and then he gives us the sizes of beams
Mm,
and column connections. So
mm,
there are metal connectors also which are used to join different beams and columns, and so basically it is as safe as any other, or even safer as any other building material, like to put it that way. It's nothing different,
right.
because you actually get it structurally vetted, and then you design it, you build it accordingly.
Right. So I'm going to, just take two more questions, though there are quite a few still lined up. So as promised, I'm going to send them to you, and we would request you to please answer them. But taking the last two questions, Tanvi Soham has asked, do you think grains present in timber tell about its quality? The kind of grains or the number of grains, would that be the way you identify it or talk about its quality?
Quality, but yes, the species.
Okay.
It can tell you about the species. Like the softwood species, the grain are generally very light. I mean, and very straight grains. I mean, the color is light and the grains are straight. And if it is a hardwood species, it generally darker in shade, and the grain could be cross sectional, flowery, or spiral, but it does not mean that it is low quality.
Right.
I don't think any wood species is low quality, because any species can be very well used for some or the other application. So
Right. Um, and Tanvi has a question. Other than yellow cedar, is there any other species used in termite resistance?
yeah, as I said, even oak is quite termite resistant, and even teak, what we traditionally use in India, is termite resistant species. So, and there are other species also which will have like a percentage, so like cedar and oak have very good termite resistance. There'll be certain species, and teak also has very good termite resistance. There will be some species which won't have as much as these species have, but so if it is not an area which has too much of termite, you can look at exploring other species as well. But I think, to name a few, other species would be teak and American oak.
Right. Before we move on to our last question, I'd like to just ask our participants to definitely take out some time and fill into, a survey at the end of this session, talking about short-term programs. And we'd like you to give us the feedback on short-term, as well as we have, as I've announced earlier as well, we have an ongoing admission happening at the JSID, where we take in admissions in the next term. Our next term is going to start in August. We also have some fantastic scholarship for deserving students. We'd like you to we'd like you to come and consider whatever the curriculum, and see the methods of pedagogy, which I'm very sure is going to help you understand the subject matter of interior design much more closely and with a lot of hands-on experience. So one more question for you, Bhavna. How climate responsive and sorry, let me just remove this. How climate responsive and long lasting do you think material like wood is? And given India has extreme weather, how does wood sustain this? Okay, so climate responsive, long lasting, the Indian weather climate.
I think I've already answered it partly in my
Yes.
previous conversation, but if you look at time, I mean, I can tell you there are temples in South in our country which are like thousands of
Yes,
years.
true.
Yeah, so which
Palaces and temples.
palaces and temples like
Mysore Palace, yes.
Mysore Palace, Padmanabha Temple. So they were
Yes,
done,
correct, correct.
so there are structures available not only in India but across the globe, which were done maybe centuries back, and so I think if you use the right species, right manner, engineer it well, you can actually design it for the kind of life you want it to live.
Right. Well, thank you, Bhavna. I know many times you reiterated some of the answers, but I think also because it is due to the deep interest of our participants. I really look at the quality of questions, and I thank you, participants, for making this so much more worthwhile session for all of us. Thank you. And I must say that Bhavna has been very kind to not only share this information, but if you would wish to go to Artius to have a look at a lot of the work in close detail, she would be most happy to do so. And we would love to help you organize that, because let me inform you also that there are some extremely fantastic scholarship available for students, as I said, deserving students, of course, for our next term, which is on hospitality. Those of you who are interested to consider, understanding what the hospitality sector, the design for interiors in hospitality, you are please welcome. Come and join us, come and meet us, find out more about it, and we'd be happy to give you more information. But in the meantime, Bhavna, thank you. We do hope that we, in fact, are very interested to start a short-term program on understanding timber as a material, and perhaps you, of course, would be one of our experts to come and give more information on that material. But thank you so much. Thank you, participants. I look forward to meeting you again in the next to next Thursday. So bye-bye.
Thank you so much and hearing me out and inviting me. It was really my honor to be here this evening.
Okay. Bye-bye. Be safe. Take care, all of you.